"You can take my bread," said the little girl. What the tribe did left everyone shocked. Wagon wheels clattered over rocky ground. All around, dry cliffs echoed the hoofbeats of approaching riders. Ezra Whitlock gripped his rifle tightly, hiding the movement from his wife and adopted daughter. He had already seen them, silhouettes on the ridge. Indians. Armed. Dozens. "They're coming," he whispered. In seconds, the wagon was surrounded. One of them, a man with a burn across his cheek and eyes like rusted iron, stepped forward. "You crossed sacred land. Leave everything behind, or walk barefoot." The threat hung heavy in the air. No sudden moves. No wrong words. And then, little Emmy slowly stood up in the back of the wagon. "You can have my bread," she said softly, holding out a hardened crust. The tribe froze. Every rider. Every hand on every weapon. The burned man blinked. Ezra's heart pounded as the silence stretched on. And then the chief dismounted. He stepped forward and took the crust with both hands. Not as charity. As honor. Ezra Whitlock was once a man of stone. Born in Georgia, he built homes with his hands and spoke only when words were heavier than nails. After the fever took his wife and unborn son, Ezra left everything behind. The tools, the house, the town. He wandered west, building cabins for men who never asked questions, sleeping under stars too cold to care. Locals called him the silent drifter. He didn't correct them. He never stayed long enough. Years passed. His heart gathered dust. Then came Laura, a widow with quiet strength and grief that matched his own. She brought little Emmy, a girl no one claimed. She was 4 when Ezra first saw her, silent as a shadow behind Laura's skirts. He hadn't planned on caring. He hadn't planned on staying. But grief recognized grief, and over time, silence gave way to something softer. He married Laura in spring, under the budding cottonwoods. Emmy took his hand a week later and called him Pa. Ezra didn't speak, but he held it tight. For 3 good years, they lived in a rented home on the edge of town. He built furniture and rocked Emmy to sleep when thunder came. Laura smiled more. Ezra began to believe peace might last. But peace is a borrowed thing. When the bank called in a debt on land he'd never signed for, Ezra fought. The sheriff wouldn't listen. The judge refused to delay. By winter's end, they'd lost the house, the workshop, the garden Laura had planted with Emmy. So they left. A rickety wagon, 2 mules, and a map that promised fertile land beyond the desert. West, they said. Safer, they said. Ezra knew better. He'd heard of the tribes. He knew where the lines were drawn, in old treaties and young blood. Still, they rode on. Through windstorms and dry riverbeds. Through lands where the air held old songs and footsteps uninvited. Until today. Now, surrounded by warriors, Ezra stood between his past and a choice he hadn't wanted to make. And his daughter, a child not born to him, had just offered everything she had to strangers with fire in their eyes. And something inside him broke open. Not fear. Not rage. Something older. Something he thought he'd buried. The tribe hadn't eaten in days. Even from the wagon, Ezra could see it. The way the warriors' horses stood lean, ribs pressing against hide, the hollows beneath young eyes, the cracked lips of elders. This wasn't a raiding party. It was a people held together by pride and hunger. The buffalo had vanished months ago. What remained was memory and fire. Kylo, a young warrior with a hawk's glare, sat stiff in his saddle. His spear trembled not from fear, but fury barely held. He glanced at the crust of bread in the chief's hands with scorn. "This is shame," Kylo spat in their tongue. "We surround them like warriors, and we beg like dogs?" He spoke to the others, his voice rising with the wind. Ezra didn't understand the words, but he felt the heat behind them, the challenge, the fracture forming. Then came the reply, soft, aged but clear. Old Singing Wind stepped forward. His white braids fell past his shoulders. His frame bowed not just by time but by grief. He carried no weapon, only a carved staff worn smooth by decades of stories. He looked at Emmy, then at Kylo. "We have burned for years," he said. "But fire feeds on children too. I buried mine under ash. Let's not dig new graves. Kylo's mouth twisted, but he said nothing more. The chief raised a hand. His name was Calkez. Scarred across the chest, the mark of exile branded in lines down his right arm, a punishment for making peace when others wanted war. Once banished for parleying with soldiers, Calkez had returned only when starvation forced the tribe to reconsider what pride would not fill. Now he held a child's bread like it was an offering from the moon. He stepped toward the wagon. Ezra placed himself between the chief and his family, rifle lowered but visible. Laura gripped Emmy behind him. The child's hand was still outstretched, though empty now. Calkez did not draw a weapon. Instead, he spoke slowly in practiced English. You came across sacred land. You did not know. Still, we suffer for trespasses, for broken promises, for graves not our own. Ezra said nothing. His mouth was dry as the canyon wind. The chief looked again at Emmy. She reminds me, he said, of someone we lost, a long time ago, before peace was a ghost. Then he turned to his warriors and spoke in his language. Ezra watched the shift. Some lowered their weapons. A few dismounted. Kylo did neither, his jaw clenched. And then, something changed. A girl stepped out from the warriors, thin, no older than 10. She wore a necklace of bones and river stone. She walked straight to Emmy and touched her hand. No fear, she said in broken English. Emmy blinked, then nodded. Ezra exhaled. It felt like the first breath he'd taken since the riders had appeared. Calkez watched it all, eyes unreadable. Then he looked at Ezra. You carry no soldier's smell, no greed. Why do you cross these lands? Ezra answered, voice low and even. My family lost our home. We were told the West was open. We didn't know it meant open like a wound. Calkez studied him a long time. Then he said, we are all bleeding. Some cuts you see, others we bury deep. Behind him, Kylo snarled. This is weakness, he snapped. They lie. They steal. You forget how many graves we dug after peace failed. I remember, Calkez said, calm as stone. But do you remember why you live now? Because my daughter once offered her food to a dying settler boy, and I let him live. That child became a man who warned us of ambush, who died for it. Do you remember? Silence followed. Kylo looked away. Ezra felt Emmy press close to his leg. She's not your daughter, the young warrior muttered. No, the chief agreed. But she is someone's, and that makes her sacred. A murmur spread among the warriors. Ezra met Calkez's gaze. I don't ask forgiveness, he said. Only passage. And I'll leave behind anything you ask, if it buys their safety. The chief turned to his council of elders. Singing Wind nodded. Another man said something in their tongue that sounded like, let the spirits decide. Then Calkez did something unexpected. He handed the bread crust back to Emmy. You shared. Now I return. The gesture was clear. A trade, not a surrender. Ezra felt Laura's breath catch behind him. The wind shifted. Dust swirled across the canyon floor like smoke. Somewhere overhead, a hawk circled. Kylo spat in the dirt and rode to the edge of the circle. But he did not leave. And the rest for now stood down. Ezra lowered his rifle. Not because he trusted them, but because he chose to. Calkez stepped forward, dust rising beneath his boots. The riders parted for him, silent as stone. Ezra watched, every instinct screaming to protect his family. But something in the chief's bearing, not threat, but gravity, made him pause. The old man held out the bread once more, not toward Emmy this time, but to Ezra. You are the one who must carry this now, Calkez said. Ezra stared at the crust. His hands, still rough from decades of labor, didn't move. Calkez waited. Behind Ezra, Laura whispered, take it. Ezra reached out and accepted the bread, holding it as if it might crumble into ash. It felt wrong to take a child's offering, but he understood the meaning now. This wasn't food. This was witness. This was trust. Calkez nodded once, then turned to face his warriors. His voice carried across the canyon. We do not starve because we are weak. We starve because we chose not to be monsters. He looked to Kylo, who bristled. We have fought, the chief continued. But what has it brought us? Hollow graves, lost sons, winter without fire. Kylo stepped forward, voice hard. And kindness will feed us? Letting trespassers go. Ezra spoke, surprising even himself. No, kindness won't feed you, but neither will killing a man's wife and child. And if you do that, then you're not warriors. You're the same kind of killers that took my home. The words dropped like stones in still water. Kylo's eyes narrowed, hand twitching toward the knife on his belt. But Calkaz lifted a hand, stopping him. Emmy stood suddenly, small and fearless beside Ezra. You don't have to like us, she said. But you don't have to hurt us either. The canyon went utterly quiet. Calkaz stepped closer to her, studying her as if peering into the past. You speak like my daughter once did. He turned to Ezra. What is her name? Emmy, Ezra said. She wasn't born to us, but she's ours. Calkaz gave a slight nod. Blood isn't the only truth. Then his gaze hardened. But others are not like us. There are men who come after you with fire, not bread. Ezra's stomach tightened. Who? White men, Calkaz said simply. Soldiers, settlers. They follow, not far behind. Ezra's mind raced. He knew the name of only one man who might hunt a fleeing family this deep into native territory. Dutch Coran. He was no soldier, no lawman, just a killer with papers and the backing of a corrupt judge. The kind of man who made profit from misery. He'd helped seize Ezra's land, and now he wanted more. Dutch, Ezra whispered. Calkaz nodded. Yes, that is the name. Kylo stepped forward again, his face alight with renewed purpose. Then let us deal with them. Let the earth drink their blood. Let the girl watch how peace dies. No, Calkaz said. Kylo turned on him. You would protect them? I would protect who carries no weapon against us, who offers bread instead of powder. They trespassed, and you would kill for that? Calkaz's voice cracked like thunder. Then you are no different than the men who burned our winter homes. A few of the younger warriors murmured in agreement. Kylo's eyes flared, but he said nothing more. Ezra stood slowly, cradling the bread like a relic. If Dutch is close, we don't have time to argue, he said. He'll kill anyone who gets in his way. Then go, Kylo said bitterly. Run and let him follow. But Calkaz didn't move. Instead, he raised his hand, and, to everyone's shock, stepped between the Whitlocks and the path behind them. No, the chief said. They are under our protection. A ripple moved through the warriors. Kylo's voice turned sharp. You swore never to stand between white men and the tribe again. I swore to protect what is sacred, Calkaz said. And today, that sacred thing is a child's kindness. Ezra looked around. Some warriors looked unsure. Others nodded solemnly. And then, to Ezra's disbelief, old Singing Wind took his place beside the chief, planting his staff into the dirt with a dull thud. Kylo glared at them both. But when two more elders stepped forward, placing themselves beside Calkaz, he knew the tide had turned. Alone in his anger, he rode to the canyon's edge and sat fuming. And then came the echo, not hoofbeats yet, but the whisper of dust rising in the distance. A faint, growing tremor beneath the ground. Calkaz turned toward it. Now comes your shadow, he said. And in the far past behind them, Ezra saw what he feared most. Dutch Coran and his men. 15 riders, rifles ready, dust clouds blooming behind them like smoke from a fire not yet lit. The canyon wind shifted. What had been still and tense now began to hum with an approaching weight. Not just dust or distance, but violence. Calkaz turned toward the eastern ridge, eyes narrowed against the rising veil of sand and sunlight. His voice, barely audible, was more observation than warning. They come. Ezra followed his gaze. Distant specks gathered form, riders in tight formation moving fast. The low thrum of hooves, like distant thunder, became rhythm. Then shadow, then shape. Dutch Coran led the way. He sat astride a pale roan like a man born to saddle and sin. His black coat fluttered behind him, the long-barreled rifle resting easy across his saddle horn. He didn't slow as he rode down the ridge. His men, 15 in total, followed like hounds behind a predator. Ezra's grip on his rifle tightened. He knew Dutch too well, knew how he smiled when he lied, how he pressed his boots into courthouse floors while others bled for his profit. He was no outlaw, not technically, but in places like this, the line between law and lawless was as thin as a bootlace. Dutch reined in hard at the outer edge of the circle of warriors, spraying dust and contempt in equal measure. His horse snorted, and Dutch scanned the gathered tribe like a man unimpressed by obstacles. "Well, look what we got here," he said, voice as smooth as it was venomous. Ezra Whitlock and his squatter kin, tucked up behind a wall of feathers. Wasn't expecting that. He grinned, showing a gold-capped tooth. Ezra stepped forward, calm but ready. "You shouldn't be here, Dutch." "That right." Dutch swept an arm wide. "Thought this was open land. Free to roam. Free to reclaim what's mine." "You're not a lawman." "Law's a coat," Dutch said. "Fits whoever puts it on first." He looked at Calcas, then at Emmy, then back to Ezra. "That your girl?" Ezra didn't answer. Dutch's grin faded. "You know you left a mess behind, Ezra. Bank wants your head for skipping out. Judge wants it for contempt. Me? I just want what I'm owed." "You stole our land," Laura said suddenly. Her voice was steady, but Ezra could feel the fear behind it. Dutch ignored her. "Truth is, I don't care if you run. I care who helps you. I've been following tracks for a day and a half, and now I find you hiding behind redskins." That word, sharp, ugly, hit the air like a slap. Calcas did not move, but the warriors behind him did. Quietly, efficiently, spears slid from saddle loops. Arrows were notched. One by one, they formed a half-circle around the Whitlocks. Dutch saw the shift. His grin returned, thinner this time. "Oh, I see. So we're playing noble protector today." He raised his rifle, not high but just enough. "Step aside, old man," he told Calcas. "No need for anyone here to get hurt over people who don't belong." Calcas did not step aside. Instead, he took one step forward. The warriors behind him responded in kind. A ripple of movement so controlled it might have been rehearsed. "They are under our protection," Calcas said. Dutch chuckled. "That right? You protecting settlers now? Maybe next you'll open a hotel." He scanned the tribe again, then focused on Kylo, who stood a few paces off, separate from the others. "What about you, boy?" Dutch called. "You with the peace party? Or are you ready to take back what they stole?" Kylo didn't answer. Dutch sneered. "That's what I thought." Ezra stepped forward again. He knew this rhythm, the goading, the pressure, the slow escalation toward gunfire. "You want me?" he said. "Take me. Leave the rest." Dutch didn't look at him. "You think this is about you?" he said softly. "It's never been about you. It's about what happens when people start forgetting who owns what." Then he raised his rifle all the way. "I won't ask again." Ezra opened his mouth, but Calcas spoke first. "You have asked too much already." Then, in a voice that carried through the canyon like a bell, "You come to take, always to take. But there is nothing left here for you." Dutch's horse shifted, agitated. So did his men. "Don't make me shoot an old man," Dutch warned. "You will die first," Calcas replied simply. And then Ezra did what he hadn't planned to. He stepped beside the chief. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't even bravery. It was instinct. A man sees a line drawn in the sand, and he knows which side of it will keep his soul intact. Dutch saw the movement. "You siding with them now, Whitlock?" Ezra met his gaze. "No. I'm siding with what's left of me that still believes peace is possible." Dutch's lips curled. "Then you're a damn fool." He motioned to one of his men, a lanky rider with a crooked jaw. The man started forward until he saw arrows raised. Everyone aimed not at him, but at Dutch. The message was clear. You fire. You die first. The crooked-jawed man stopped. Dutch lowered his hand slowly. Kylo was watching everything. Ezra saw the war inside him. This was the moment. The one where hate either took root or withered. Calcas turned, not to him but to the whole tribe. You want to fight? Then fight for something. Fight to keep what little good we have left. Or kill it now, and bury your hearts with it. Silence. Then Kylo slowly stepped forward. He did not raise his spear, but he came to stand beside Calcas. Dutch swore under his breath. You think this ends it? I've got 20 more men 2 ridges back. You're delaying the inevitable. Ezra stepped up. Then let it be delayed by mercy, not murder. Dutch's jaw clenched. He looked again at Emmy. Small, thin, still holding her crust of bread like it was gold. He cursed again, loud, then spat in the dust and turned his horse. This ain't over. He rode back the way he came. His men hesitated, then followed. No shots fired. No blood spilled. The warriors remained still until the dust of Dutch's retreat settled into the canyon's quiet again. Then Calcas turned to Ezra. You never begged, he said. But your daughter reminded us who we used to be. Ezra looked down at Emmy. She smiled faintly, and for the first time since they'd left home, Ezra believed they might find another. The wind in the canyon stilled. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a fire. The riders were gone, for now, but no one moved. Not the warriors. Not the Whitlocks. Not even Emmy. Calcas stood in silence, eyes fixed on the trail where Dutch had vanished. He didn't speak until the last hoofbeat was gone. Then, without ceremony, he turned and handed the bread crust back to Ezra. Let this remind you, he said. The world turns not on blades, but on small things. Like this. Ezra nodded. His throat tightened. Behind him, Laura knelt beside Emmy, brushing hair from her brow. The girl looked small again. Not a symbol, not a witness, just a child too young to carry the weight of what she'd done. But she didn't cry. She hadn't all day. Singing Wind stepped forward, his staff dragging a faint line in the dust. The danger is not over, he said quietly. Men like Coran ride in packs, and when they come again, they won't speak first. Ezra turned to Calcas. You said he had more men. Do you think they'll return today? Calcas looked at the sun. It had just begun to lower behind the cliffs. If he comes again, it will be tonight. Under shadow. Kylo approached, his expression unreadable. The hostility had drained from his face, but something darker had taken its place. Understanding, maybe, or regret. If he brings others, Kylo said. We fight. Ezra studied him. There was no glory in the young man's voice, just resolve. You'd do that, for us? Ezra asked. No, Kylo replied. For her. He nodded toward Emmy. And for the peace my father died trying to build. The tribe stirred. Some murmured. Others nodded. Ezra understood then that this moment, this stand, had not just saved his family. It had drawn a line in time for the tribe as well. A decision about what kind of people they wanted to be. Ezra reached for the bread crust, then broke it in half. He held one piece out to Kylo. She gave what she had, Ezra said. It's only right I do the same. Kylo looked at the bread, then at Ezra's hand. Slowly he took it. It was not a handshake. It was not a treaty. But it was enough. Singing Wind turned to the other elders. We cannot shelter them long, but we can give them a safe way through. We have paths, Calcas said, that no settler knows, worn by deer and spirit walkers. They lead through the southern hills. If they follow them by dawn, they will reach the other side before Coran returns. Emmy tugged on Calcas' robe. He looked down. She pointed toward the cliff where Dutch had vanished. He won't stop, she said softly. He'll come again. He wants to hurt people who help us. Calcas knelt eye level with her. Then we must show him that helping does not make us weak. He stood and motioned to one of the riders. Prepare water. 2 horses. They leave with light. Ezra stepped forward. You don't have to do this. Calcas' voice was even. No, but we choose to. Kylo added. That's what peace means. Choosing. The tribe began to move, warriors breaking formation, elders returning to their shelters, young ones running for fresh water skins. They didn't speak much, but their movements held purpose. And for the first time, Ezra felt something close to welcome. He turned to Laura. She was still holding Emmy. Her face, drawn and tired, held a faint wonder. The kind of wonder a woman feels when disaster passes by without taking her with it. "Do you believe it?" she asked. Ezra didn't answer at first. "I believe something changed," he said. "Us." He looked around, at the canyon walls, the tribe, the fading sun. Then he met her eyes. "All of us." That night, they sat beside a fire ring built from old stones, just outside the main encampment. The warriors kept silent watch along the ridges. Calkes joined them only briefly, to hand Ezra a wrapped bundle of dried meat and herbs. "For the journey," he said, "eat sparingly." Singing Wind sat with Emmy and taught her how to say "thank you" in their language. She practiced the word until it came smooth as water. Then she gave her half of the bread to him. "You'll need it," she whispered. The old man took it with both hands, as if it were gold. Kylo sat nearby, sharpening a blade, but his eyes were not on his weapon. They were on the stars. He spoke once, near midnight. Tonight, peace was not a story. It was real. Ezra didn't reply. He simply listened. And when the fire burned low, he finally let himself close his eyes, not in fear, but in sleep. In the morning, before dawn touched the canyon floor, the Whitlocks mounted 2 slender ponies and followed a narrow trail south, led by a silent young warrior who carried no spear. Behind them, the canyon stayed quiet. But something had been left behind. Not just dust or tracks, but a memory of a child's offering, of a tribe's mercy, of a war that never came. They rode through the hills before the sun crested the highest peaks. Ezra led, one hand always near his rifle, though the path remained empty. Laura followed close behind, Emmy in front of her, half asleep in the saddle, her small arms wrapped around the neck of the pony. The trail wound through pine scrub and sandstone, narrow and silent, just as Calkes had promised. By noon, they reached a high ridge where the canyon dropped away behind them. Beyond it, open country stretched like a sigh, grasslands untouched, hills like waves frozen in time. They dismounted there, drank from the skins, and shared a strip of the dried meat Calkes had given them. No one spoke for a long while. Then Emmy asked, "Will they be okay?" Ezra didn't answer right away. He looked back at the land they'd come from, the place where strangers had stood between them and death, where a war had paused at the sound of a child's voice. "They'll keep living," he said. "That's more than most get." Laura leaned into his shoulder. "I keep thinking," she whispered, "about how close we were." Ezra nodded. "I know." They stayed until the wind shifted. A breeze from the east, warm and dust-sweet. It smelled like sage, like safety. By sundown, they reached a creek where cottonwoods leaned low. They set camp there. Emmy curled up in the bedroll without complaint. She still held the crust of bread. Just a piece now, dried, cracked, but whole enough to remember. "I'd give it to someone else," she murmured, eyes heavy. "If they were hungry." Ezra watched her sleep. He didn't cry. He hadn't in years. But something inside him softened. Later, as the fire cracked low and stars emerged like old truths overhead, Laura reached for his hand. "We'll make it," she said. Ezra looked up. "We already did." And behind them, far back in the canyon, old Singing Wind stood at the edge of the cliff, watching the trail where they had vanished. He did not speak, but the spirits whispered. Sometimes the smallest ones carry the oldest truths. Sometimes kindness is a language even war forgets to kill. And somewhere far away the canyon rang.